Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Select Board meeting to order. It is Monday, November 14th, 2022. It is 6 p.m. Good evening, everyone. Let's start with the pledge.
You don't do the Zoom thing?
The Zoom, we're Zooming.
No.
We don't need to wave it. I'd like to,
Oh, we don't?
because what I'd like to say is that it is streaming and we are recording for later. So those are the Zoom. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we do have a quorum. Leah is on Zoom. She'll be coming in person. I think she's driving. And Tom is Zooming in for the whole meeting. So everything will be a roll call vote.
Motion to approve treasury warrant 2310 and payroll 23 PW10.
Through the chair, if I may, I reviewed the warrants today. Nothing is out of the ordinary. Everything's in order.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second, excluding election and COA wages. Yeah.
Any discussion other than that? Roll call vote?
Clock eye.
Nichols eye, exclusions as noted.
Whiteman, aye.
Yeah,
And Benoit, aye.
yeah, and I excluding any day, please.
Thank you.
Approval of the minutes of November 1st, 2022,
Second.
as written.
Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Clock eye.
Nichols eye.
Whiteman, aye.
Galvin abstain.
Galvin was here. Yeah, Tom is abstaining. Tom, I think you have a bad audio connection. You might want to shut off your,
Yeah.
if you want to shut off your,
Can you hear me now?
yeah, better.
Hear me now?
Yep, thank you. And Benoit, aye.
Okay. Yeah.
Excellent.
Hey,
Yeah, you might want to shut off your video. It might help to with your bandwidth. Public comment. Anybody here for public comment tonight? Good evening, sir.
Williams, just to check it up on the road, Overlook Road.
Yep.
And did you get your report done? You were saying you were...
It is not done, Dick. I apologize, but this is getting ready for everything else, and I do apologize for that. I have talked to Mr. Buckley about that. I have looked at the GISs, obviously, as you and I have discussed. Talked to Anita about it, and I do have your list of road names. It doesn't say list of accepted roadways, but I'll write that down, and I'll talk to Mr. Buckley first thing in the morning, okay?
But I did show you with the town report and
You did. I have that right on my desk, yes, sir.
okay. Very good. Thank you.
All right.
And to say, and you did say Overlook Road, but you and I did talk, and it's either Overlook Court or Overlook Way, so, okay? I know.
It's listed all kinds.
Just in case anybody else wanted to know what you and I have been talking about. Yeah.
Oh, I know. One thing, just one thing I want to refresh everybody's memory at a special town meeting. Don't forget that they did pull $10,000+ from the road work to buy a truck, buy a truck that was supposed to have been used for the road. So just to let you, if you remember that, back in December, I believe.
We did.
I wasn't here.
Back in December.
Say that again, Dick, I'm sorry.
At a special town meeting, you transferred money that the dirt people were paying the town. Margaret had set it up an account that they pay so much a ton.
It was 10 cents a ton. That was way back when.
Right. And Joe had it moved from that account to help pay for a truck at the DPW.
Becky? Only because I wasn't here when that was moved.
You
so-
wasn't.
I can have to go back and,
Okay.
off the top of my head, I don't recall it.
Was that a completed
look
project,
it up.
Dick? When-
That was, yes, that was all the money that was there, and That's at the end.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
Right. Any other public comment? All right. Anita, here for department head updates.
Well, pretty much since August of last year, our office has been consumed by elections, and it's not over yet. We still have about 17 ballots to count. We're calling a meeting of the Board of Registrars because the state changed the law this year, and it used to be that a ballot had to be postmarked and received by election day. The new law is that if it's postmarked by November 8th, which was Tuesday, and as long as our office receives it by last Saturday, the 12th, at 5 p.m., get that. So we have 17 more ballots to count, and we're going to have a Board of Registrars meeting. So we're still just dealing with preliminary figures. But Rutland had a good turnout. We had 60% of registered voters voted, and we started working on some preliminary statistics, and of those, we had a turnout of, not counting the new ballots that need to be added in, we had a total turnout at all three precincts of 4,145 registered voters, and we broke the numbers down. 63% of that number, or 2,607 voters, voted at the polls on election day. Another 1,246 voted by mail. That was about 30% of the total voting. And we had a 2-week period of early in-person voting, and only 292 people voted early in person, which was what, 7% of those that actually cast a ballot. And we mailed close to 1,800. It was 1,792 ballots, and most of those were returned. We had, well, 10% weren't returned. We had 181 ballots that didn't come back of those that we mailed out. It really put a dent in Becky's postage budget, because it's 81 cents each to mail the ballots out. The state pays to mail the cards, and the state also pays for the voter to return the ballots to us, but towns. And so it was 1,000, we're still working on the numbers, but basically $1,452 to mail the ballots out. It should be, we should get something from the auditor's office calling it a unfunded mandate, and hopefully we will get reimbursed on that figure, but for now, that's where we are. And it's an awful lot of, it's just, once cards start coming in, it's a lot of handling. You have to get the cards in, you have to clock them in, you have to enter them in the state voter system, you have to keep them in order, you have to update. So it's so time consuming that luckily we had some great help from one of our young election workers, so he really helped out a lot. But it is what it is. I don't know whether, I looked back, and in 2018, which was the last midterms, when we did not have vote by mail, we actually had 64% of our registered voters voting. So it's hard to tell what gets people out or how, but it does seem like vote by mail is here to stay. So we just have to start adapting ourselves to that. So.
I don't imagine yet, so this is my comment to that, is the state looking for feedback? Because even the 200, you said only 290, I think was the figure of people came into office. That's foot traffic, though. That's a disturbance to your day.
It was also weekends too. You have
so the postage is a small, probably, part of all of the other resources that were extended.
And they will send out questionnaires and things, but it's the Secretary of State's office, but they understand what we're dealing with, and it's the legislature is the other, and they don't, so. I know the Mass Town Clerks Association has tried to lobby. Some of it would be helpful if those people that voted in person could deposit their ballot right into the machines, but that's not allowed yet. So I'm just gonna, and I'm sure it's gonna evolve more before the, the 2024 election. So, but basically, we're looking forward to moving on and doing other things rather than elections because we have projects.
Well, thank you for all of that. That's, yeah, Leah?
Sorry, it's Leah. I have just a comment, I guess. Anita, thank you for all the breakdown and everything. I know it's a lot of work for your office and for kind of town hall in general. So I appreciate all of that. I think the feedback piece is really important, and I wonder if after having gone through one cycle with the new law, the updated law and everything, if there can be a concerted effort to reach out to, like, through the MMA or something, to really do some strong lobbying at the legislative. I'm sure Kim and Ann would have would understand our plight, but also that's not only a new, like a Central Mass or a Rutland specific thing, but having the numbers to try to push that we want to maintain accessibility to voting, but we need funds to be able to do that, and to continue to burden the towns with that cost can be decimating.
Yeah, and we're not alone. All towns are and cities are in the same boat. So
Let us know if our wee little voices can help at all.
thank you.
Is there anything else? Move on.
Chief.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. First, I want to talk about traffic. Currently we're up to 87 motor vehicle crashes this year. It might sound kind of high, but it's actually 6% lower than last year. And for the past 5-6 years, we keep creeping down, which is really odd considering all the new growth and the amount of traffic. We're actually getting lower and lower in accidents as time goes on, which is great. I'd like to attribute that to the guys out there doing the high visibility, consistent traffic enforcement, and we've really been trying to focus on problem streets and intersections. I mean, we get complaints and we do our best to respond to complaints, but really we try to focus our enforcement efforts on the streets that show the data with the most accidents, the intersections. 122 in Pleasantdale, Wachusett, East County. Those things that put up the high numbers. So we've been trying to keep officers at those locations to bring those accident numbers down. We received close to $18,000 in a traffic safety grant from the state. 5,800 of that is for those radar speed signs, like the one we have by the baseball field. So we're going to get 2 more of those. I'm going to work with Joe, try to pick a good spot to put those in. And the rest of it is all for overtime enforcement. So, call volume wise, we're about on par where we were last year at this time. It's pretty busy. There's a lot of stuff going on. We've noticed some increases in overdoses lately, which the past couple months it seemed like it spiked and then it's leveled back out again. It's almost like there was a bad batch, so to speak, going around. So it's less than it was a month or so ago. Also noticing increases in mental health calls, unfortunately. And as it gets colder and darker and the holidays come, we'll probably see a little bit more of that. We've had some, I was creating this whole list of significant arrests we've had in the past few months, but it was getting too long, and you don't want to listen to all these schools. But there are a couple that I want to bring up. On September 10th, our officers received a report of a man walking around a neighborhood in the evening wearing body armor and carrying a rifle or a shotgun, who then got into a dark-colored SUV and drove away. Officers, they immediately called for backup from another town. They got a couple officers from Hubbardston to come down and help them. They ended up locating the man as he was pulling into his driveway, armed with a loaded AR-15 rifle, a handgun, and highly intoxicated. He was taken into custody and disarmed without incident, charged with operating under the influence, carrying a firearm while intoxicated. The weapons were seized and the LTC was suspended. License to carry was suspended. So I just wanted to bring that up because our people did an absolutely excellent job with that. Something that could have gone really bad really quickly. And they handled it well and took care of it. So it was that one. And then on October 23rd, this is a series of events that went on through the night coming from one house. So officers responded to a car accident. A 15-year-old girl had taken her mother's car without permission, obviously because at age 15 you don't have a driver's license anyways, to go to a party in Rutland. So she crashed the car. She was charged with unlicensed operation, use without authority, and possession of alcohol. She tells the officers that, yeah, I was going to a party up the street. And not too long after that, the officers get called to the party up the street, find 200 plus underage kids, all drinking, all running away. So again, help from other towns come manage that large crowd, make sure everybody gets safely into vehicles and sober drivers. And they make contact with a 16-year-old female that lives at the house. 16-year-old says, oh no, I'm here, my parents aren't home, it's just me. So after investigating a little more, they find out that the 50-year-old mother is in the house drinking with all the kids, supplied them with the alcohol. So the mother was arrested. The daughter was charged with impeding the investigation. So they break up that party. Meanwhile, two of the kids that ran off into the woods ran back, smashed the windows of the house, ran back into the woods again, then called 911 to tell them that they had been drugged and they were lost in the woods. So now I have people searching the woods for these kids with the canine. Eventually, they're located. They're charged for the vandalism at the house. So it was just a whole night of hundreds of kids and absolute disaster. And again, with only 2 people on duty, handled that quite well. So it's pretty busy out there. What else do we got? Our body camera program has been fully implemented. We started doing that over summer into the fall. It's working well. We're regularly providing video evidence of arrest to the DA's office. And my favorite part about this is I've cleared 3 complaints against officers based on body camera footage. All false information. Last week, we took a call about an officer that allegedly forced their way into a residence, threatened somebody. So, all right, let's watch the video. It's not at all like the person described. Professional, courteous, so clear that away. So they're very helpful in that regard. Now I want to talk about my budget. If you looked at it,
He sits up straighter and,
so I have expended 96% of my expense line items. So I got a couple $1,000s to carry me to June. And of course, my rest of my operating budget will now be funded by the Deborah Foundation with the gift that they give every year. I did a comparison with my expenses compared to the other Wachusett towns. So overall, I have $39,000 dedicated to purchase services, supplies, and other. The next lowest in the district is Paxton, who funds $106,000 for expenses for their police department. It's impossible to operate a police department on a budget with $39,800 for expenses. So my proposal coming up will obviously be increased to reflect what I actually need. So just giving you that heads up. Overtime, we're doing pretty good. We're 44% expended. We should be mid-30s right now, so we're a little bit ahead, but we'll make that work. Staffing-wise, I'm fully staffed, but I'm losing a guy to West Boylston pretty soon. So, which seems mostly to be a money thing, as he maxes out in West Boylston. He's going to be about $6 more an hour than he is in Rutland. think that's about it. Oh, and also thank you for placing my special town meeting article for the best. It's much appreciated.
If I may, through the chair. First of all, Nick, one of the incidents that the chief described, actually the complaint came through to my office. I called the chief over, and so thank you for taking care of that, looking into it, and you certainly resolved very quickly, so that was one of the things. Secondly, on all those other incidents and reports that you've just stated, nice job.
Thank you.
So thank you, and thank your officers.
I will.
Thank you very much.
Through the chair. So, Chief, the incident on the 10th, was that individual from town, or do you know where that person was from?
Yes.
It was a resident.
Yes.
And thank you as well for
Thank
your good work.
If I may, this is a little bit probably of a multi-year conversation, but is there value to considering increased staffing, especially for that overnight shift? I think right now we generally have 2 officers and looking at overtime and everything. But just as the town continues to grow and we continue to have those mental health related calls that really benefit from having at least 2 officers, I imagine, is there benefit to considering and expanding the force over the course of?
Right, yeah, definitely. My current minimum staffing per shift is 2 officers. We try to schedule 3, but with time off, a lot of times you end up with 2. It's getting to the point where I kind of need to switch the evening shift, like the 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift, to a 3-person minimum staffing. Just because that's where the highest call volume is. You almost have to have 3 on. You know, any incident like both of those I just described, that ties up 2 or 3 people for hours at a time. Never something else comes in on the other side of town. We'll get to it when we get to it. It's, you know, something as simple as a car accident with a telephone pulled down. That ties up 2 people for several hours. So, my FY24 budget proposal does have a additional officer built into it. So.
And thank you for the extra patrols out and everything, and you know, hearing the fewer accidents over the course of time, especially now that we're coming out of COVID and people are back on the road. To your point that we're more populated and everything, I think that does a lot of, shows a lot of effort on your part, on your department, you and the department's part, to really make that a cohesive point. So thank you. Have you had a lot of feedback from school buses this year as far as people not respecting school buses and everything, or?
I can, off the top of my head, I can only think of one complaint. 2 complaints. One of them is a certain spot on Main Street, and we put people there.
Oh.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything. Thanks
Thank you.
to the department.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thanks, Anita. Sorry I wasn't here to thank you. To you and all the election workers and everything.
They're all
I
great.
know it's a big deal.
Thank you. Town administrator update, sir?
Nick just told you guys everything I was going to tell you. Thanks, Nick. But just a couple of things. About a week ago or so, we had a discussion about security at the schools and their capital program. Based on that discussion, Tamika reached out to the office of Senator Goby and Representative Ferguson. They have responded, and they will be meeting with us on December 1st at 10 a.m. At the annex, and that's to do with any possibilities of compact grants coming up, security grants, infrastructure grants. So we will certainly thank them. I thank them for meeting with us. So anybody that wants to come up, that's what it'll be. December 1st, 10 a.m. in my office. Okay? Secondly, I did have a department head meeting today, and we discussed budgets. I had a little bit better news than Nick had, obviously. But the bottom line for everybody's budget is pretty much where it should be as of the last warrant, which is roughly 33 to 35% the bottom line of their budgets. Like Nick says, we're going to have to do transfers as we get closer, and I know it's quite a ways away, but I was happy to talk over that with them and to make sure that they keep an eye on their budgets, and we're just moving forward. It's probably the first time we sat and talked about budget. So with that. And today, Tamika received a couple of checks totaling $5,406.58 from the National Opioid Settlement. So when we first realized we were going to get an amount of money, I did reach out and asked what specifically it could be used for, and what I was told at that time, that it just goes right into the general fund. I did have a conversation with Becky today. I'm sure we could separate and use that for uses for public safety. And I have to say this this word right. Narcan. Narcan, extra additional police on calls, drug-related, ambulance, fire. So it's not a lot of money, but it's something. So that will be deposited through Becky into the general fund and use it as we see fit. That's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions for Gary right now? It's the hotline.
It's Batman.
I was going to say Batman, but I didn't seem to fit. Okay, so on to old business, follow-up, Wachusett Road and the Ridge Road property. So we are, this is based on the Chapter 61A and the timing of taking it out of chapter by the property owners. And I know that the assessor's office has been keen on writing a procedure and in policies and how we handle the Chapter 61, and we contacted KP Law to make sure that everything was in order, because as you know, we've been talking about a year ago we were looking at, or in the spring we were looking at to purchase the property because we had first right of refusal, and then it was withdrawn from coming out of chapter, and then we're talking about bringing it out of chapter again. And so we just want to make sure that we've covered everything. And so the board has a letter from KP Law that would be sent by KP Law, just telling the property owner this is the procedure, this is what you've done, this is when you can expect to move on. Happy to read the letter out loud if anybody wants to read it. Tamika, was this put on line for everybody to, as part of the packet? Okay.
I did not, just because I wasn't certain where it came from town council and it hadn't been discussed publicly.
Sure.
That would be open.
Okay, sure, sounds good to me. Rather than the gist, if anybody would like me to read the letter that we're proposing to send, I think we could do that. It's to the Zottleys and Miss DeFazzi. DeFazzi? Is that?
That's his body, yes.
I didn't know if I was pronouncing it correctly. This firm represents the town of Rutland, Massachusetts, and I'm writing with regard to 2 parcels of land that you own and classified and taxed under said general law, Chapter 61A, namely the parcel of land located at 42 Ridge Road, identified by the assessors as parcel, and the parcel located on Ridge Road, identified as parcel. Together, it's the property. As you are aware, the town has a right to purchase the property if you convert the use of the property to residential, industrial, or commercial use, or if you enter into an agreement to convey the property to a buyer who will change the use of the property to such purposes. A change in use, whether by you or by a buyer, also gives rise to your obligation to pay the town conveyance or rollback taxes under 61A. It appears that you may be changing the use of the property. Specifically, I have been informed that you obtained subdivision approval earlier this year to divide the property into 22 residential lots, and that percolation and other tests have been done to confirm the residential use. If you, as the owners of the property, intend to change the use of the property, you are required to provide the town with written notice of conversion, and the town has an option to purchase the property. You are further advised that you are required to comply with 61A while the property is classified under Chapter 61A for a period of 1 year from the date of the property is removed from classification. The assessor's office has confirmed that the property will remain classified under Chapter 61A until June 30, 2023, and the 1-year period during which the property will remain subject to Chapter 61A will terminate on June 30th, 2024. You are required to comply with Chapter 61A if you change use of the property or enter into an agreement to sell the property for residential, commercial, or industrial use on or before June 30th, 2024. The town intends to monitor activities on the property to ensure compliance. Signed, Sharon Everett from KP Law.
You need a motion to send this or not?
Do we have, is that to send it? Is that a motion to send it?
I said, yes, I make a motion that we send it.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion on this letter? I think the intent is that the June 30th, 2023 and June 30th, 2024 needed to be clarified. So, yes, sir.
Dick Williams from Overlook. Did you ask for any help from Janet Morrison, by any chance?
Yes.
You
We did. We have correspondence from her as well, Dick. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any further discussion from the board?
Clock eye.
Nichols eye?
Whitman, I.
Tom?
Alvin, aye.
And Benoit, aye. So this letter will be, Tamika will let Sharon know, and
Yep, she'll send it
that
on
will
our
be sent on our behalf. Thank you.
And send it on our letterhead, yes?
No, KP.
Yeah,
This is KP?
she's gonna send it directly from KP.
Oh, all right. Yep.
Further discussion on article number 22 for the special town meeting, and this is borrowing for 307 Main Street.
And if I may, through the
Yes,
chair,
please.
just to give everybody kind of a brief history of how this has happened. This opportunity came across our office a couple of months ago. Kind of asked to be kept quiet for that, just to put some feelers out and see how the town felt about purchasing this property, the 307 Main Street, which turned out to be a 15-acre parcel. 307 Main is the Red Farm across from the Susie's property, if anybody's familiar with it. To me, at the time, it seemed like a very good opportunity, something to preserve the space and actually some acreage that we could use along with the buildings for such things as other buildings or structures, as well as some ball fields. There's a lot of variables, honestly, that got in the way of this. We never received an official purchase and sale, so there's nothing binding here. There is a bona fide offer of $800,000 for the 15 acres. There is some work that has to be done to the property. However, I guess the last thing that got in the way of this, or that I should report, I should say, didn't get in the way, is our two conceptual designs. I believe that you have that in your packet. One is for 5 single-family houses to be on the 15 acres, and another is for 90 40B apartments, which would require a roadway, obviously, and would certainly require a tremendous amount of water and sewer, which we really have to check in the capacities to see if we can do that. But that being said, it certainly would raise the appraisal value of the property if these were to be come to fruition. So I'm just reporting those variables. I am recommending to the board, to finance as well, and obviously the general public, that this be tabled. I don't feel that it should be presented or left up to the town body, if you will, to vote on it for the borrowing of something that obviously we don't want to take monies from anywhere else to put it into, to borrow on this. We've, as you know, talked about the proceeds from the Heights coming in. Everybody, not everybody, but most folks that I've talked to, staff of the board, feels that certainly this money could be put to better uses, that we certainly need infrastructurally for buildings, so on and so forth. So therefore, my recommendation to the board is to table this article. And if it does come to fruition, if everything is done and procedures followed, then we can certainly hold a special town meeting later on for a minimal cost, from what I'm told, and decide at that time. I just don't want to put this kind of burden on the taxpayer. Becky, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, because I'm sure I missed out a lot of points, but for a set of plans to be put together at the last minute, that we heard actually from the appraiser that these plans existed, it threw a wrench into the works. So I just want to be sure, if it's done, if the town so desires it be done, I just want to make sure procedure is followed and we do it right.
If I may,
Yes,
for
please.
clarification, so the documentation that we had received was not with the notice of the intent to sell or whatever was not properly filed or whatever. Is that
It was a bona fide offer. Hasn't filed. It certainly has to go to other boards and commissions in
Right.
town. It certainly has to go through CIPC for a purchase of this magnitude. None of that has happened. So it's a bona fide offer for the property for $800,000, but that's it. It's not a purchase.
Yes.
It was the
and sale.
purchase and sale that should have been included to start the clock,
right?
which was not, so there was no clock.
Okay, that was my question.
Yes.
Was that we're still kind of operating. We all have had conversation or conversation through conversation that this is in the works, but as far as official documentation that officially starts the clock hasn't happened. So
Correct.
if we were to take
That's
it to
correct.
town meeting, we still have a lot of unanswered questions that that haven't been answered and haven't been fully explored by the addition, which I think was some of the concern about placing it when we still had so many other questions.
Right.
Not necessarily speaking for myself that I disagree with it, but I just wanted more information. And didn't want to feel like we were rushing or making decisions based on what we think, but not what we know.
Correct.
So, okay. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
I will make the motion then not to place it. That's what we need. If we don't need it, we don't need it.
It's already placed.
It's already placed,
So
so
we just, I believe the correct would be no action.
No action on the town meeting floor.
and that's just on the floor.
Right.
All right.
So we don't need to
I
do
just
anything
want to
tonight.
make sure that everything was covered,
Purposes.
so nobody...
Perfect. All right.
And thank you, Gary and Becky, for all the work on this, because I know it's been a lot of back and forth, and we've had a lot of questions, and I know, so, thank you.
Yes. A lot of questions.
Stuart.
One of the things I wanted to bring up, because I saw 30 days was a limit there, and I do believe that was wrong.
It was.
If it was done properly, it should have been 120 days.
The 30 days, if I may, Carol, the 30 days was in reference to the appraisal, but that is only applicable if the property is being converted, not if it's just an intent to sell.
Yeah.
So that was a mistake on the part of their attorney, and we discovered that through the process. But you're correct that the town has 120 days to either exercise or waive their right of first refusal.
Once the clock officially starts.
Right.
Right, we had thought we had a complete package. They did follow the proper procedure as far as certified mail and notifying the boards, but Attorney Everett pointed out that it was a bona fide offer that we received and not a signed purchase and sale. So essentially, that stopped the clock, and Sharon has formally notified their attorney in writing so that everybody is on the same page with where we're at this time.
Thank you.
That was, I know that was a lot of roller coaster ride the past couple of weeks, and I thank you all for that. Next is, I know somebody brought it, I think somebody brought it up with Tamika, and it's something that also, goes along with our goals and objectives, which is to write out policies, a how-to guide, for some things, especially if it's not something that we do all the time, and just so that we can pick up a manual and do that. And that we're gonna, Tamika is going to start with, for this, checklist for town events. So this is born out of the 300th and the Oktoberfest that happened, and so Tamika has gone through her brain catalog and come up with some high-level points about pieces that need to be addressed. It's just a draft for us to look at. I don't know that we need to do anything tonight, because I would like to suggest that everybody look at it more carefully and ask questions of Tamika individually and see if we can move this from draft forward. I want to say that the caveat that here is, if we don't know that something is happening, we can't help anybody implement a policy. So I don't know how to bring the horse to the water to drink, and that's the old adage, but you know, somehow we're going to try to get this out to boards, commissions, and committees, and hopefully that will reside with them, so if anything passes through something, a meeting or something, we'll go, oh, call Tamika. And Tamika will help guide that along. So, and I would even ask Tamika, have you run this by anybody from the 300th or anybody that worked on this with you for that event?
No,
Something
I
that they
haven't
missed?
run it by anybody yet.
Yeah.
I was just able to get it drafted late last week, so I figured I would bring it to the board first.
Yeah.
Because that event was fresh in my mind, I kind of just went down the list of, you know, what kind of things came up that could potentially come up again in the future.
Perfect.
I don't want to take credit because it was a resident that brought it to our attention, and I do think it's a really great idea. I think the biggest thing for committees and for folks to know is for it to be successful, just to allow enough time to come to us for help, because there are certain time constraints as far as permitting goes and board meetings and things like that. So I just don't want to see it coming to us too late and then, you know, not be able to have the event go forward.
Right. If it's at a point where you think that you could want to share that with somebody, just to get a user's side on the other side of the table, to say.
And I do
this is
have
what
it
we
in
do.
the meeting packet that I posted on the website, so if anybody from the general public has thoughts or ideas too, absolutely, please share them.
Excellent.
So
Yes.
this is just for town events,
Yes, that is specific to
town events.
town
Now,
events, and
just,
not just for boards
What
and
are you
commissions.
thinking? What are you thinking, Skip?
so I'm gonna have an open house at my house. Public's coming in. Do I have to follow this?
Only if only if those things apply to you. So it's not just for boards and committees. It's for like the Naquag PTO when they held an event, or
No, this
if
is me, Joe Citizen, not.
yes, if you're selling alcohol or putting up a tent, then yes, those things would apply.
If you're selling alcohol.
Selling alcohol, I could see that, a
Right.
license to do that, but I need a permit to put up a tent?
If it's above the size that's referenced there, because I
20 by
checked with
20, that's not a very big tent.
that comes from the fire chief and the building inspector, that is the requirement, that it's supposed to be inspected by the fire department, has to have fire suppression equipment, and requires a building permit, which is something that came up during that Oktoberfest process, as well as the dig safe.
So if it was 19 feet 11 inches by 19 feet 11 inches, you don't. But if it goes to the 2020, which is interesting because you can buy those at Ocean State. So
That's what I'm
to
getting
your point, yeah. Or if I put up 2 10 by 10s or 4 10 by 10s, does that act as?
There's also, and I should probably add this in, I just thought of it in my head too, it also depends on if the tent has sides. That's an important factor as well, but I did confirm with the police chief the fire chief before I wrote that, so that I could specify the size, and that was what he indicated would require permitting and fire inspection.
So through the chair, I mean, this already exists, right? This requirement for permitting for
It
tents?
does, but I don't think anybody knows that
No,
it
I know, but
exists.
it already is.
It exists,
Right,
correct.
it exists.
Yeah.
It's just, where does it exist?
In the building
In the-
department.
Yeah, yeah. It's in Viewpoint. It is something that they permit for. If you go through a professional company, like the one that the 300th used, they are aware of it, and they actually will note it on the invoice that proper permitting must be obtained by the applicant. So if anybody's installing a tent professionally, they are aware of it, but I don't think the average Joe necessarily knows about that. But we haven't put it out there either, so if we put this information out there to the public, hopefully it will help educate a bit more.
So through the chair, so Recreation and Council on Aging have tents that go up every year.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have to get a permit every year for this?
Technically speaking.
Because it's actually the town putting up the tent.
I can't speak to that. I would say that probably lies with the building inspector. When I wrote this, I was thinking more about outside, like the town, you know, like staff.
Right.
Especially where we have agritourism is growing. There's more events that are happening in town that aren't necessarily put on by the town. I think a lot of folks just don't know what they don't know, if that makes sense. And
So there'll
I
probably
think,
have to be a lot more clarification on this.
yes,
issue.
exactly. Yeah, this was just like something I put together to kind of start the discussion, but certainly it's not a final draft by any means.
And through the chair, so the food too is if they're selling food, not anybody who's serving food, doesn't matter if you're just giving food or you're not charging people, right?
If you are serving any sort of food, that has to go through the Board of Health with a proper food permit.
If you're selling it.
Correct.
Right.
Not if I'm giving you
not
samples of what
Right.
they cook, you know, sausage or whatever.
Because this says if food is being served, so if that means sold? or
That is
sold?
that is a good place for,
Right.
to get clarification from the Board of
Right.
Health, because I don't know the specific answer to that.
Because if it isn't, then everybody who has a party in their yard is serving food. They're gonna have to get a permit. So I think that has to be.
No more socializing, okay?
This is why I don't invite people to my house.
I mean, it says it's for town events,
No.
so
That's what I said, but it's a town event.
That's why he's
They're gonna-
clarifying.
Oh,
This is
so
gonna
I guess I
eventually
should
gonna say-
clarify, if it's something open to the general public, like if you're just holding an event at your house and you're having a barbecue, this is not intended for that, but this is like, hey, I have a business and I'm welcoming the public, I'm advertising it, I'm having people come, I'm serving things professionally,
So-
then that's what that applies to.
So I had an illegal party when I had the 100th anniversary and invited the whole state to the farm when we were 100 years old.
That was before my watch, Skip. So
Yeah,
I'm
well.
not gonna hold you to that.
Okay, no. No,
Well, I think this is why there's room for comments, to just be clear, to clarify things.
Absolutely,
Because
yeah,
we
it's
we don't
not-
wanna just
No.
stop everybody from having everything.
No,
It just
no,
wants to make sure
I think
things
more
are-
of the intention of it was is that, you know, with Oktoberfest, and not to single them out, it was a very large event, and I think, like you said, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know,
Right.
and it wasn't until it came up that it was kind of like, oh geez, they needed this, they needed that, so to try to prevent that scramble in the future, if we can just have it and say, hey, you're having an event, here's what we're
should
gonna
check
need,
this.
here's what we
Right.
can work on.
And I can see
you
that, I
know.
mean, that was a big fundraiser and a lot of people and stuff, but,
Mm-hmm.
you know, somebody having small events at their.
No,
farms
I
and
don't think
places
that's
that are gonna
that's
be-
the
right.
the intent.
But I just, I didn't wanna
use
make
of
sure
it.
we're clear, so it doesn't bog everybody.
No, I
down,
agree,
so.
and that's why I wanted to have the discussion as to how we refine it.
Right. And sometimes when we start looking at policies, we find things that we thought, oh, shoot, didn't find that one. But we're gonna uncover things that we don't know, so thank you very much. We'll continue this conversation.
And I think it's helpful, if I may, just so that kind of there's a checklist that everybody's on the same page, regardless of who you are or what the event is. Like, it's at least a starting point, and if things need, you know, if it's a little bit more specific because of the type of event or whatever. But I had emailed also about a checklist, not just, mine wasn't specific for events, but for all licensing and permitting boards and everything to have general checklists for the material, kind of a baseline of information and material that the boards may want to see when they're being in conversation. So then it's not like a gotcha, like everybody needs to have their updated insurance or whatever. And for us, I think a lot of it's like the 1-day liquor licenses, and then also the at the end of the year when we do all the relicensing and everything. But just I've heard comments from a lot of residents in meetings additionally that would be really helpful, because there are people that are trying to do a lot of good but don't have town government background, so they're trying to do a lot of good out of the goodness of from a very pure and innocent point, and just don't know what they need to do.
Exactly.
And it's frustrating that then it feels like they're not getting, I think sometimes the public feels like they're not getting the information that the boards or commissions want, and until it's too late, and then it's like a gotcha kind of thing versus a like collaborative, like we want you to be successful. If we have a checklist, it's not a whole lot of time from any office or whatever.
All they can do is pick up a call, the selectman's office, and they'll help you out. I mean, everybody should know that. I mean, they did it for 300, they do it for everybody.
And
So, I mean, these people, all these people you talk about, if they pick up the phone and call the office, they will get help. They don't have to run around with blinders on saying, oh, nobody's out there to help us.
And I'm not saying that people aren't calling the office, but I think if there was a checklist of this is
If
the,
they don't, if the checklist, sure, the checklist is great. If they don't go on the website or anything to get the checklist, they're not gonna have it.
they can go in. It's available, and then it creates whoever's in the select board's office. If it's Tamika, if it's Gary, if it's someone else, that there's a standardized checklist.
There always used to be, you know.
If I may, I don't know if you saw my response, Leah. I had written back, so essentially, every application from the select board office, I do have a checklist on the website. The same for the zoning board of appeals and the conservation commission as well. And I think that I have tried my best to make it obvious where to find it, so it's not too hard for folks to find. When I sent out the renewal applications for the year-end stuff, I started from scratch again, and I created all new checklists for each type of license, so that it was very explicit for folks, you know, and the few that have had questions have come in. So I have really tried my best to try to make sure that people have the tools they need to be successful.
Yeah.
In those ways.
And I appreciate that. I think it's not trying to like, I'm just trying to make it for kind of everyone, and that there's a sense that at least a baseline standardization for everything. And I think in my email I had commented that obviously the ag bylaw is fairly new, the agritourism bylaw is fairly new, and there may be some other additional significant zoning bylaw changes coming up also that could impact the licensing side of things. So I think we as a board, I know I'll speak for myself, need to just be refamiliarize myself with those bylaws and what the board can and should actually be asking for. And maybe it's not so much select board, and maybe it's more planning board or zoning board of appeals or conservation or whatever, earthworks, but just so that we know, have a pulse on what should be, rather than, well, so-and-so says that they want this, but so-and-so says that I don't need it. You know, if we have a standardized checklist, at least then there's baseline information. In a sense that everything is being asked of the same.
And I think that anything has come through the select board, Tamika, has been, you've been professional, in my opinion, you've been professionalizing the office. Even just walking into the office is very professional now. And what we look at, what we're receiving is, you know, thorough, and so I think that what Tamika's trying to do within the office is to do those standardizations. But again, you know, if you don't know what you don't know, and you're finding them out, and so I want to thank you for that. And, I think we're well on our way. The awareness is you know, getting us more than 50% there. So. We'll keep plugging away at this, and as things identify, you know, bring it up with Tamika, and she's all over it. All right. The next is right of entry for 5 Christmas Tree Lane. Looking at you again, sir. Could you?
I will.
You can.
This all started before I came back to town. A resident actually reached out to the office asking if he could purchase approximately 41 by 41 foot piece of land that's referred to on this agreement. Registry in book 6776, page 176. That is actually part of the original layout of Christmas Tree Lane. Once I did some research and looked at the assessor's maps and so on and so forth, I had advised the board or recommended to the board that this parcel not be sold because we don't know what the future brings. If there's going to be development to the west side of this, which leads into the school property. At any rate, we did have several site visits. I met down there with the resident and the director of public works. We discussed a right of entry agreement and what we could do. And you have in front of you in your packet what I will refer to as the second agreement because the wording was changed. And if you look down to the third whereas on page 1, whereas licensee desires to regrade and install a retaining wall on licensee property which requires licensee to grade and work on the town property. The first agreement that came across in that same section says licensee desires to regrade and install a retaining wall on licensee property which requires licensee to work on the town property. So what I'm concerned about is have a permanent regrading of that parcel because we don't know what the future is going to bring. I have no problem with this gentleman having a right to entry to perform the work for his retaining wall. But I feel that if there's going to be any regrading on our property, the town's property, then certainly we should have specific plans to make sure that it doesn't interfere with anything in the future.
So, if I may, I'm a little confused because if I remember correctly, this is the property that I don't think we've talked about for quite a while. I don't recall having a recent conversation. So, kind of, Gary, you've reopened this with the property the property owners come in to talk to you and kind of reopened it, and you've looked at the property, and you feel that there may be value in the town maintaining the property, because I know the conversations back and forth before seemed kind of split as far as, yes, there's value to keeping it, no, there's not. And no, there's not value to keeping it, but how do we get rid of it? So therefore we're hanging on to it versus that there is value to keeping it for the future. So I'm just trying to get caught up to speed with how things have gotten to this point.
In May, we had sent a letter based on our final decision of we're not selling it, we're done. And a couple months after that was sent, the resident came in and spoke with the office, and I think Gary or Joe a number of times have gone out to the property and have met with the property owner. And as of last Tuesday, my understanding was that they wanted just to have access. They want to work, to get to do their work, they needed to cross our property. And so we were going to set up just a quick, sure, for 6 months you have right of entry. And nobody will bother you about it. And since then, they've come in and said that they want to grade the property that has been given entry to. So that, it just seems like, to me, personally, it seems like it's encroaching to the part where it's like, it's not really ours anymore. Gave a mile, gave an inch and they took a mile kind of thing. So if you can, I think what we want to do is a right of entry to access their property easily to do the work that they want to do. But they can't touch our property as far as regrading or any other improvements or changes. That's what we want still.
That's correct.
So,
because we don't know what the final product will be, and we'd have to actually see some detailed plans and specifications of what it would be.
well, what you're doing though by saying that is, to me, you're giving a caveat that if they come back with detailed plans, then we would
As long as it's
entertain
acceptable.
that.
There's a possibility that it's acceptable. So the gentleman wants a permanent easement to be given. This would be a 6 month, is what we talked about, a 6 month right of entry. My recommendation would be that this would be gone over again after that 6-month period. I'd be a little bit concerned about a permanent easement. But as far as a right of entry going to do what he needs to do on his own property, I'd be okay with that. We still have to see a set of plans to make sure it's not encroaching, as you say, on town property. Lee, to answer your question, I just thought, just being me, that because it was an original piece on the layout of Christmas Tree Lane and is labeled as such, we don't know what's going to happen down the road. We don't know what's going to happen with the heights. We don't know about walking trails. The problem is if something does happen in the future, which, the future will tell us, and all of a sudden that we have sold this, initially he wanted to buy it, if we had sold this, now we have another homeowner owning a part of the original Christmas Tree Lane, and we'd have to buy it or not.
Right, I was just curious as to kind of how everything progressed. I think if I remember correctly, his big concern is drainage into his own property.
On his own property, that's correct,
Right.
because there is a swale that goes down, that abuts the neighbor's land, which is on Forest Hill.
Yep.
There is a swale that's there.
Yep.
It's an approximate 50-foot right-of-way that goes through there, and obviously he was looking to purchase the 40, which still gives us 5 feet or 10 feet on each side,
Right.
which there is room for the drainage, for the sheet flow that comes down from the top of Christmas Tree Lane towards the school. So for the sheet flow, there is a way for the water to get down there. I certainly wouldn't want that blocked.
Yeah.
Now he has appealed the decision of the board, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with that, because I came back and he appealed that. He wanted to research further and investigated, and hopefully he was looking for you to reverse your decision. And that's when I came to the board, and my recommendation was not to sell that piece of property.
Okay. And I know years ago there had been beaver issues down there, and I don't think that there's been recent beaver issues. It's not caused, like his drainage issues, it's just the land topography and not like a beaver dam that's created issues.
There was, when I was still here, as a matter of fact, we estimated it was 2 to 3 million gallon pond that was in there in the culvert that went under Rutland Heights Way is what was packed solid. So that whole area where the drainage went to was a lake.
Right.
So we had to break that through to drain that again. Since then, we've had no noticeable beaver activity.
Right. So it's not, this is just, again, the Rutland topography wetness and
Right.
not like beaver dam
Right.
or
Right.
something. Okay.
If I recall, we had told the property owner once, no, they appealed. We told them no again, followed by the letter, and now this is coming back again for the 3rd time. So, just to maybe put that in perspective as far as...
Yeah, and any of these, I'm sure the board is certainly well aware, any of the expenses that we would incur regarding the right of entry or legal agreements and so on and so forth would be borne by the property owner, not by the town.
So through the chair,
Yes.
Gary, the retaining wall, was that supposed to resolve the water issue for his property?
That's supposed to, his property is very low to the west side of his house, very low. It's probably 8 to 10 feet lower than the grade of the house itself. So we wanted to put the retaining wall in to bring his backyard
Yep.
up level and have.
And that should resolve the water issue for
Yeah.
him, and it would be on
Right.
his property.
Right.
So there'd be no need for him to touch our property.
Other than to work from it?
Right.
No,
But,
that's
yeah.
correct.
So that as long as it resolves his issue, I don't see why.
Yeah, and the last thing you would want to do is have somebody put a retaining wall on
Right, we
your
don't want to
property.
encumber our property where we can't go back and do what we need
The whole
to.
plan would have to be accepted, as you know. We'd have to take a look at the plans for what he's going to use for retainage, whether it's blocks or just granite or whatever he uses, but the whole plan would have to be inspected and approved.
I mean, it says that to grade and work on the town property, so it doesn't sound like he's necessarily looking to install a retaining wall on.
The licensee to grade and work on town property, so that, to me, that part of it, which is what I'm referring to
That's a
as
change.
licensee
Right.
agreement number 2, is to regrade our property.
Right. That's, yeah.
So I don't think we need any motion, right? We just let
Well,
Gary go back to, we don't.
There is we need to sign an agreement.
Oh, we don't
A
have to sign
signature.
it.
No, we do not have to sign the agreement.
So at this point, I would make a motion that we not sign an agreement at this time.
based on the receipt of acceptable plans.
Right. Well, he'd
Yeah.
have to come back with an acceptable agreement, so I'm making a motion that we not sign this version of the agreement.
Gary, if I may, Gary, would the first version be the acceptable version?
We still have to see the plans, but that would be the acceptable version as far as Mr. Buckley and myself are concerned, yes. We still have to approve a set of plans.
But we don't have the first version.
I don't know what you mean by
We do,
plans.
but I.
Well, just to see if we get the lay of the
updated
land, what
one
it's gonna
in your
look like.
packet, and then
What his property's gonna look like to make sure that none of it is infringing our property.
Okay, okay.
No issue, I have no issue with granting a right of entry, no issue with him working
And I
from our
think-
property to repair his property, but our property should be left intact with no additional features.
And I think if that's what we can come to the agreement of, I think the board will probably entertain that, if I can be so bold to say that, but I am reluctant to sign anything until.
Okay,
until
and
that's
I've talked to
done.
Mr. Buckley about this, and actually a couple hours before meeting tonight, so I believe that some extra wording should be added to this agreement for your signature. So I'd like the time to add that. It probably won't be ready it could be ready prior to your short meeting before special. Otherwise, we could have it at the next meeting.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just a question, the retaining wall, is that abut the town property, or is it strictly everything on his?
It abuts both, Dick. It abuts town property and it's on his, it's gonna be built on his property.
On his property, but abuts ours?
Yes.
For planning board, anything over a certain height has to have a signed engineer plan? And just
Good point. That's a good point. And I'm just looking at it from memory. I don't know if you're familiar with the property itself, but
Yes.
I'm saying at least by the house side, 8 to 10 feet.
Yeah, and I think you should have a signed engineer plan.
Okay. Oh, I agree.
To
That's,
protect our
okay.
property.
I agree. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. So we have a motion to not
You don't
sign.
have to.
We don't have
make
to
a
do it?
motion not to
Perfect.
sign.
All right, security at the school buildings, Gary mentioned this earlier. The security at the schools, cameras, lockdown equipment, et cetera, is on the capital plan of the school. We would like to accelerate that, and so therefore we are, to see if it's possible that we could accelerate it through granting in external funding. And that's why on December 1st, you're having Kim Ferguson and Ann Goby
Sure.
in, and we'll see if there's any possibilities of getting some grant money for that. We had thought that we had a grant about 18 months ago. I don't know if anybody remembered that. We had applied for a grant and it was it declined. So we're trying to bring it back and see if there's another avenue to take care of this. So, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if I just may add, Director Moriarty and David Caraccioli at CTMS worked intensely on this project, and so they have a great deal of information and they did a great deal of legwork already. I reached out, with Mike's recommendation, I reached out to Mr. Caraccioli, and he would like to attend the meeting with Senator Goby, because I think he would be a valuable source of information, because they had looked into equipment and gotten quotes, and they really had gotten the ball rolling until the funding kind of came to a halt, so.
Since we're including one school principal, do you think we should be including, at least inviting all of the principals? I don't want anybody to feel left out.
Yeah, yes, we certainly can.
I think
I
we
only
should.
reached out to David just because he had
He
been
was
the one that
involved.
was involved with it.
And they may say
previously.
no, but I think
Yep.
I think it would benefit us to, and them to get an
I
invitation.
agree. He did, David did speak when we did this, the school inspections. He was certainly the spokesperson for that, but he was certainly talking about all 3 schools, so I agree, we should invite 3 principals.
I don't know if there's value, and I don't know if school committee or Simcoe people, or if anyone from the district can attend the meeting also, just to speak that it, strengthen numbers as far as
I can certainly, because I have had conversation with both Mr. Riley and Mr. Wild regarding this, so I can certainly reach out to them as well.
Yeah.
It may take a bigger area to meet, but I would certainly include them as well.
Just to speak, you know, if it's
Sure.
on their, show that it's on the
Right.
capital improvement
Okay.
plan for the school side, as well as something that is important to us as town and our schools. And maybe if Nick's around and can stop in from a public safety perspective.
Oh, he'll be
with
around.
Mike.
Nick will be around, Mr. Moore will be around. You're gonna be okay.
Wherever you want.
Because actually the talk, and you'll know about it, Michael, was to make sure that all this stuff is piped directly up to you guys as far as the camera goes, so we can have a full view at any time we want, and if something, God forbid, does happen, that we're on it. Okay?
Tamika, if we get attendance, I would almost ask if we could have it in this building. Just,
Okay.
the biggest place we have is the conference room in the annex, and that's not very big. So maybe we could have it in the conference room.
If I may, does that interfere with Festival of Trees and
Yes.
or the Smithsonian?
This room will be the only, well, I think this room will be available, so I can check.
Or
to
if they
see
want to
this
do it in
room's available.
schools, that might be appropriate too, if one of the schools wanted to host it. But,
I can reach out and find out.
and it depends on who says yes and can attend.
Or if Skip gets a permit for a tent, we can have it at his house.
There you go.
And
You
food.
get
I
12
won't
extra
get
tents and
the
put them
permit.
apart from each other. All right. The board has no correspondence. No other business as far as I know of.
Motion adjourned?
Motion to adjourn. And roll call, please.
Like I.
Nichols eye?
Wait, and I.
And Benoit, aye. Thank you, everyone.